I would wallpaper my entire house in this. Isn't it so yummy? It's June. It's Pride Month. There's so much in this deck. Gender has nothing to do with it. It's great. Kind of something. We've got little bows in the beard. Love that. It's rainbows and butterflies. Hello everybody, it's Sylvie. Welcome or welcome back to Tarot Magpie. I hope you're doing all kinds of good today. It's June, it's Pride Month. And so I'm doing a little bit of a celebratory kind of energy video because God knows there is lots not to be celebrated in the world right now. And so it's rainbows and butterflies just for this, just for now. We're doing queer decks. And I'm going to also be introducing my new zine, my Spectrum of Spreads zine, which is going to be live on my Etsy, so you can go and check it out. But stay tuned till the end. I'm going to do a little flip through. I might do a little mini reading. I'm going to tell you about an offer that I've got going on my Etsy. I know how to keep you hooked. But for now, we're doing decks. So the decks that are queer, so they're created by queer people intending to represent or speak to the queer community in some way. And then I've also got a few decks that I don't know anything about the creator, but they feel queer to me in various ways, which I'm obviously going to explain to you. And so without further ado, because I have filmed this intro more times than I am proud of, and I just want to get on with it. So first up, the Queer Tarot. This feels like the most obvious choice. The clue is very much in the name. This is the Queer Tarot. Queen of Swords, hi. Yeah, one of the things I really like about this deck, I love the Progress Pride flag colours for the rainbow and the Ten of Cups. That's gorgeous. As I was saying before I so rudely interrupted myself, the figures in this deck are real queer people. So in that sense, the deck represents the real life queer community, as much of it as a deck of 78 cards can. Obviously the community is large and diverse, and not everyone is ever going to be able to see themselves represented in a single tarot deck, but I digress. I think that was a really smart move. It is a Rider-Waite-Smith clone, so you know there's only so radical and queer that it can be. It's a rainbow Rider-Waite-Smith, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I very much enjoy that the lesbian flag is showing up in the Judgment card, because I feel like everyone knows a mean lesbian, and it just feels very appropriate to have us in the Judgment card. It's a Rider-Waite-Smith clone. That's what I was getting at. So it's a rainbow Rider-Waite-Smith clone with queerness sprinkled in to the figures, but it is a Rider-Waite-Smith clone, so it is still the kind of colonial ideas, the patriarchal ideas, that kind of structure of society, the roles that we assign to certain people, like that's all still there, even if you gender swap the Emperor and the Empress. I think especially if you're familiar with tarot or just archetypes in general, the kind of gender roles and the expectations are still very much baked into those archetypes. Simply putting a bunch of queer people in the deck, gender swapping a lot of the cards, doing some gender fuckery, it's not queering the tarot, it is just kind of sprinkling in some rainbow goodness. This Queen of Pentacles, absolutely stunning. Orange and pink is one of my favorite color combinations, so I really lucked out with the lesbian flag being orange and pink. I feel like I spoke about this deck all the time and then it just kind of disappeared off the face of my channel, and I'm not sure why, but I'm excited to bring it out for June and for the summer because it's a very summery deck. I think I've said this before, but like especially this like hot pink and the way it's got that like noise, that grain to it. It looks like plastic chairs or like plastic something that's got bleached in the sun, and like the sea salt of the beach. It feels like a warm evening when like the tarmac is still hot from the sun even though it's gone dark. Oh, it feels like summer. It's gorgeous, it's beautiful. I love the colors. I love the dogs in the chariot. Like, when I say it's not the most radical, the most queer deck out there, it's not queering the tarot. It's not a bad deck. It's just not the most radical one out there. And God knows I love a fun Rider-Waite-Smith clone. Why am I ending on the tower? That's a little bit dramatic. Let's go with the Lovers. Let's do that. The Lovers of Pride. I adore these card backs. They are some of my absolute favorites in my collection. I just hate the cardstock. Put this deck on like a low Scarabeo cardstock or like, a fancy linen cardstock. I would use it all the time. Alright, next we have a totally different vibe. This is the Labanco Tarot, a deck exploring the surreal, the intense, the queer, and the divine. And like the intense and the queer is absolutely the description of this deck. Just like zoom us in a smidge. And you know, this very aesthetically very different from the queer tarot, and it also plays with the system and the structure a lot more. I paused on this lovers and then didn't talk about it. I think this is incredible as a lovers card. Fantastic. There is so much power, there is so much energy in this deck. And I love how kind of like it's intense. Intense is the word. It's intense and kind of twisty and kind of something. I can never find the words to describe this deck, and I think the very fact that I do find it so hard to kind of confine into like a style or like neat little description, I think that in itself is a very nice analogy for like queerness in and of itself. Like it will not be neatly tidily put into a box the same way that people cannot be neatly tidily sorted into labels and identities. Like labels and identities, extremely useful. I'm so grateful that all the different labels and flags exist. I think they are such a important tool for people figuring themselves out, because if you don't have words for something, you can't describe your experience, and you've only ever known your own experience. And so if people aren't giving you the words, you're never going to be able to like understand yourself very well. And so for that reason, I think labels, all the different flags, they're really important, but they are not everything. Like we make language up. Even people who share the same label experience their queerness in different ways. Labels are also very mutable and very changeable. That's one of the great things about being queer. I love it. Like, I feel like it's maybe a bit of a stereotype that gay people just talk about being gay all the time, but it's kind of true. I spend a lot of my time when I'm talking to my like partner and my queer friends about our experiences and about queerness, and I think it's wonderful. So anyhow, the Lamanco Tarot is definitely a much, I don't want to say darker, it's just more intense and more, it feels more like uncharted territory compared to like the last deck, the Queer Tarot. It's a Rider-Waite-Smith clone. It's in a rainbow outfit, but it's Rider-Waite-Smith for Pride. It's the archetypes we know, and it's more or less what we know dressed up. Basically, it's a clone. That's the whole point. And then Labanco works with the Rider-Waite-Smith system for sure, but it's definitely coming at it from a different perspective, and it's not a deck that I ever fully understand on first card pull. Whenever I sit down and pull cards from this deck, I need to do a little bit of translating. I need to do a little bit of even, you know, something like this Ten of Wands, which is for all intents and purposes quite a traditional looking Ten of Wands cards, and a lot of the cards in this deck are. You know, it's a person carrying 10 wands. Also, I love the rock climbing because I feel like rock climbing is a very popular queer pastime. But anyhow, like for all intents and purposes, it's a pretty straightforward 10 of wands. There's just something about this deck I have to do a little bit of translating, because it's not just another Rider-Waite-Smith clone, and it does have like a bit of a different perspective. And it's like each card has a bit of a different perspective, which I think comes back to what I was saying about like labels are great, the card archetypes are great, you know, knowing that the Six of Wands means pride, funnily enough, and like celebration and like a little bit of like glory. Knowing that is one thing, and knowing the archetypes is one thing, but then each card like has a bit of a different perspective on it, and it has its own perspective on it. And I think that really reflects how you have your idea of what lesbian means, but that doesn't necessarily mean you know how I identify personally and particularly. This is going to be a long video, and apparently I'm really getting into it with my like queer discourse, not discourse, just thoughts, queer thoughts. All of my thoughts are queer. This is what happens. My partner's gone away for work and I've been alone for like all of 48 hours, and I'm just like, I have no one to talk to. Let me film a whole bunch of videos. So anyhow, we're going to end on the Fool. This is the Labanco Tarot. I love it. I'm really sorry this is out of print. So although I've just spent however many minutes singing its praises, apologies if I've just put a deck on your wish list that is nigh on impossible to get, but it's fantastic and it absolutely absolutely had to be mentioned. The Fyodor Pavlov, this is the mass market edition. So this one is much easier to get hold of than the Labanco. The Queer Tarot also that I showed at the beginning, that's mass market. That's also really affordable. So this deck is heavily Rider-Waite-Smith influenced in the imagery. It's based on the Rider-Waite-Smith system. Argue amongst yourselves about what technically makes a clone versus a Rider-Waite-Smith inspired deck. This is, you know, sitting somewhere on that spectrum. It does have, like you can see here in this Three of Pentacles, it's got a bit of a different take on a lot of the cards. I really love the take on a lot of the cards. For instance, this Three of Pentacles, I feel like there's more of that like teacher apprentice vibe. It's a little bit more, they're on the same level instead of instructing one another. But for the most part, it's a Rider-Waite-Smith clone. But I think the guidebook, you know, it's not huge. It doesn't go super deep, but it does start to dive into some of the Rider-Waite-Smith associations and the different like structural stuff that is baked into the Rider-Waite-Smith and attempts to address that a little bit, which I think is good. I think more decks should be doing that. This deck is also stunning and beautiful and queer. And also, like, here we've got this Knight of Coins in a wheelchair. It's inclusive in quite a few different ways. It's not just a like gender swapped Rider-Waite-Smith. We've got what feels to me like a more genuine attempt at inclusivity kind of more across the board. I'm not saying it's perfect. I'm not the person to make that kind of judgment anyhow, but I appreciate that too, because I think queerness goes hand in hand with other kinds of marginalization, and, you know, one struggle is everybody's struggle. So I appreciate that being included. That feels very kind of true to the idea of community. I think I'm just, I was going to say scrolling. My brain is gone. I am pulling cards. I love this. Six of Cups. It is the artist and their younger self, and I think it's really beautiful. This strength card is one of the cards I was looking for because it's like my favorite strength card. Oh, that's a bold claim, but it's definitely one of my favorite strength cards ever. And then I was also looking for the Queen of Swords. Like, also, like, it's a bit sexy, this deck, which, you know, I also appreciate because on the one hand, queerness is not inherently more sexual than a straight relationship, but on the other hand, anyone who says no kink at Pride can like get in the bin. Queen of Swords, there she is. I love her. I love a vicious Queen of Swords, and she's got murderous intent, and I love that for her, honestly. It's Charlie Claire Burgess stack. So first of all, the Fifth Spirit Tarot. I talk about Charlie Claire Burgess all the fucking time. I love them. I love their decks. I love their book, Radical Tarot. I love their blog or their Substack or whatever it is these days. I fucking love Charlie Claire Burgess. I love the Fifth Spirit Tarot. This is a more pippish take. It's not a Marseille. That's what the game Marseille is for, but it is a more pippish Rider-Waite-Smith. It is a modern deck in the sense that, like, this is a modern looking person. I would see this person in my local Tesco and, you know, not think twice. And usually I'm not one for a modern deck, but somehow this, I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is about their artwork or the way that it's been done. Maybe it's the pippishness and the way there's like less scenic details, so it doesn't look like a photograph that someone snapped, like here, this Page of Pentacles. This isn't someone I've like actually seen in a real life situation. It's just modern and it's from the context that I live in, but it's also abstract enough that I can read tarot with it. I adore the 9 Lives Ballroom neon sign in this Queen of Wands. I think it's so fantastic. This Six of Pentacles is one of the only cards I don't like in this deck because I think this is a very simplistic take on the Six of Pentacles, but that has nothing to do with its queerness. Regardless, the Fifth Spirit Tarot is easy to read. I love reading with this deck. It's just so easy to read with. I get it. And it also represents the world that I live in. in a very kind of, I think in a very like effortless way. I think that's what I mean. Like it's modern, but there's like, you know, abstractions to it. Like the pippishness is quite abstract. It's not like straight up like a photograph of modern day life. And the people in the court cards and in the majors look like real people. You know, it's not all white and thin and cis heteronormative looking and able-bodied. There's some diversity to it that again feels quite like natural. Gorgeous, gorgeous Queen of Pentacles card. Yeah, I love the fifth spirit. I rave about it all the time. I don't love the knights on like the skateboards and like the bicycles and things, but I get over it for the sake of this deck. I think this Two of Wands is so fabulous. The match and the unlit candle. Again, we love a vicious Queen of Swords. There's like some age diversity in the figures in this deck as well. Like it's been very, you can tell a lot of care has been put into this deck, and care to represent a realistic looking community of people. And that is something that I really appreciate about this, as well as its functionality as a tarot deck. So yes, and the magpie in the Seven of Swords, we'll leave it there. There we go, tarot beyond binaries. Charlie Claire Burgess is non-binary, but also their big focus in the tarot is not stripping it of the binaries, but deconstructing the binaries that exist in the tarot. Obviously there's the gender binary that we know very well in like the Emperor, the Empress, but the other kind of binaries that are baked into the tarot, which they explore in their book Radical Tarot, which I have to hand because I always have it to hand. Oh no, it's buried, but I talk about Radical Tarot all the time. This is the Game Marseille, which is the newest deck that they've come out with, and I'm so obsessed with this deck. I gushed about it in at least a couple of videos. I have never been happier to have decided to learn Marseille than when I got this deck in my hands. I was excited about it when I saw it online, but just having it, and every time I look through it, I find new details. This is one of my most favourite hierophants in the world. It's Marseille, so it's the Pope. We've got Pope Joan, a pregnant Pope Joan, drag story hour, incredible. Love her. I love all the little flourishes in the minors as well. You've got the trans flag colours for the hearts at the bottom. The courts are gorgeous. Like, oh, it's such an incredible deck. We've got this sapphic pool party. I have literally just noticed that this tattoo, which is the Cancer symbol, is dolphins instead of the traditional, I don't know, little squiggles that the Cancer symbol is made up of. Yeah, we've got the pride flag in the Six of Wands, that celebration, that pride. Oh god, and the courts are just incredible. All of the pride flags and the Ten of Cups. It's just wonderful, and I could very easily go through the whole deck, but I've done that multiple times in my off-camera life and also in videos. Okay, once again, gorgeous, vicious Queen of Swords. Like just the swords court in this deck is like all very gothy and just like extremely sexy. And then this star card is my favorite star card I have ever had the privilege of witnessing. Like the little UFO. I just love it. I just love it. I love this deck. So yeah, no surprises. So those are all the decks that I have in my collection that I know are by queer creators intending to represent the queer community or the queer experience in some way. I need more. I did also grab this book because I don't have Thea's Tarot, which is the deck that this is the guidebook for, but I want it. And this was created, the deck was created in the 80s? Did I just pick a decade out of thin air? Okay, the art is copyrighted for 1984. So the deck was created in the 80s, and I think it was one of, if not the first, feminist, female-centered tarot decks. It's a very lesbian deck, which, you know, we love to see, and I want to add this deck to my collection, but I thought I would just flip through the book to show it to you. So Thea's Tarot is on my list. The Next World Tarot is on my list. The Mini Queens Tarot is on my list. Many decks are on my list. I'm coming around to the Numinous Tarot, which I didn't think I wanted because in my head I thought it looked too much like the This Might Hurt Tarot, which I don't like the art style of. I think it's beautiful, it's just not for me. I know it's not for me. But I've looked at it properly and I'm like, no, actually, I think I really do want the Numinous Tarot. But that's beside the point. So I have a whole like list of decks that I want to add to my collection. So maybe I'll do some shopping over the next year and redo this video next June. In the meantime, I do have a little stack of decks that feel queer to me, even if they were not necessarily intended to be so. The first one is the Tarot of the Crystal World. I love this deck's description as being stuffed to the brim with punk attitude, which, you know, feels very queer adjacent. And there's just something about this deck and the way it's been pulled together. It feels kind of, it's like a little bit strange. It's a little bit queer. There doesn't seem to be, in terms of like ascribing gender to the figures in this deck, it does not necessarily match up with like traditional associations. So there's that, although I don't think that alone makes a deck like queer or not. You know, you can't just put like two men in the Lovers card and be like, aha, it's a queer deck. I think it needs more than that. Like the queer tarot that I showed at the beginning, I like that because it's depicting actual real life queer people. But I digress. There's just something about this deck that just feels a bit queer to me. Adore this King of Cups. The King of Cups is like never one of my favorites, but this one, he's great. I love him. Like I say, no real thought out reasoning. This is just vibes. I love this death card. Like it just feels a little bit surreal and a little bit like things have been kind of smushed together. And I mean that in the best way possible. And there she is. Have I shown the Queen of Swords in every single deck that I've shown off? I think possibly. I love a Queen of Swords. For those of you who may be new here, I'm a Libra, so the Queen of Swords is my significator. Like, I think it's fabulous. So anyhow, that is the Tarot of the Crystal World. Next up, the Tarot del Fuego. Again, I know nothing about the artist or the artist's intentions. I am not trying to ascribe any intent to the deck or any particular identity to the artist. That's not what I'm doing. I'm just saying when I read with this deck, when I look at the images, it feels queer to me. I don't know why. It's vibes. It's partly the kind of vivid, bright, loud color scheme. Not because we're all loud, but like, you know, you think Pride Month, you think Pride, you think being bright and colorful and loud and in your face. So maybe that is part of it, but there's just something about it that's just a little bit what, Sylvie? What are we trying to say here? I don't know. Okay, so like look at this Nine of Pentacles. It's a little bit jarring. It's a little bit confronting. Confronting is the word we're going for. What is the queer experience if not constantly being confronted by your own brain usually? And I don't know if that's what it is, but it just feels a little bit queer. I think I've pulled this exact Queen of Pentacles on camera before and said I love how she's underwater. And I suppose queens are the water level of the hierarchy of the court cards. So maybe that's it, but like it's just a little bit unexpected. And there's something about all the eyes, all the body parts, like it's almost a little bit visceral. And I think that speaks to, there's just something about the energy of this deck. I think it feels queer. So yeah, when I like was looking through my decks, I was thinking what feels queer. This one, it just does. There's something about it. Like I say, it's a little bit confronting. It's a little bit like visceral elements to it that definitely feel like the queer experience. And I'm here looking at the Ace of Swords and like cutting yourself on the truth. Ain't that the queer experience? The Lilith Tarot. Oh, look at that. Gorgeous, gorgeous sun card. First of all, rainbows on the back. This, it's the people or the figures. I don't know if I'd even, you know, they're blobby. They're genderless. It's so not important whether or not I think that's supposed to be a man or supposed to be a woman. Like, that's absolutely the least important thing about the imagery on these cards, is what gender they may or may not be. And I love that. I think that's great. Very genderqueer, non-binary kind of energy, in the sense that, like I say, the gender of these figures is the least important thing about this deck. Truly couldn't care less. Like, there's so much else stuffed into this deck. We've got like the astrology, there's the guidebook is so cool because it goes into the astrology, the numerology, the color symbolism, sacred colors, sacred numbers, planetary symbols. There's so much in this deck. Gender has nothing to do with it. It's great. And like, okay, here right next to each other almost, we've got the Queen of Swords and the King of Swords. Who's to say? Who's to say what gender they may or may not be? Not me, because it doesn't fucking matter. I don't know how the curator identifies. I don't know if that was the intent in this deck. I don't think that's not, that's not the point that I'm making. This deck feels queer. There is something in it that feels like something I recognize. Okay, finally, we have the Jupiter Power Tarot. And there's a bit of theme in what I think feels queer. This card being the perfect example, it feels kind of visceral. It feels kind of uncomfortable. Like, it's the way we've got these plants like growing out of these people, and it looks kind of scary and uncomfortable and unrecognizable. And like, again, that feels very familiar, and I am sure I'm not the only queer person who thinks so. Like that Knight of Wands, the court cards in this deck are so good. Like, it just, yeah, kind of uncomfortable. Like this Four of Cups and like the flowers growing out of the cracks. Like, oh, it's so good. I feel like perhaps this video has been quite revealing about my personal queer experience. And there's also something about the like disfigurement also feels really queer, specifically quite like gender fucky, specifically quite kind of going back to what I was saying about labels, is like, yeah, labels are great. They are not the be all and end all. And you are never going to be able to completely describe a whole person with a couple of labels and flags. And I think this deck speaks to that kind of feeling that you're never gonna fit inside a box, and sometimes exiting the box is uncomfortable, and maybe it makes you uncomfortable, and maybe it makes other people uncomfortable. I know there are lots of people who are very uncomfortable with the ways that I or my partner or some of my friends would choose to identify. Like, I use the label lesbian because it makes the most sense to the most people, but I guarantee you there are people out there who would say that I'm incorrect. And we're not going to get into it too much here and now, but like, labels are useful up to a point, and then you've got to grow out of them and grow beyond them, and that can be uncomfortable and unsettling. And this deck is kind of uncomfortable and unsettling, but it's also all about like growth. And I think it's fantastic. So, as promised, I'm going to show off my new zine. This is a spectrum of spreads. It is my second tarot zine. My first one was these everyday spreads. Both are available on my Etsy as a digital download that you print and cut and fold yourself. They're the perfect size to go in a tarot pouch, to go in a tarot journal, which is where I keep mine. And this spectrum of spreads is my little creative celebration for Pride Month. And we've got 6 little spreads inspired by the meanings of the colours of the 6-stripe pride flag. So we've got red for life, orange for healing, yellow for sunlight, green for nature, blue for serenity, and purple for spirit. I would have loved to do the 8-stripe because I love pink, but the zine format allows for 6 mini spreads, so that's what I went with. If you want a reading for me, particularly if you want a reading of one of the spreads in these zines, I'm going to be running a bit of a promotion in my Etsy shop through June. If you buy this zine during the month of June, during Pride Month, I will send you a discount code good for 28% off a 3-card reading. And so that can be any 3-card reading, but I would love to read one of these spreads for you. The 28% discount, 28% because section 28 and also June 28th was the first Pride in the States. So it had to be. At 28% more than covers the cost of the zine. So it's a really good deal if you've been thinking about getting a reading from me. And you also get yourself a cute little zine. So that is everything. Everything will be linked in the description box. As always, this zine, to my readings, to my first zine, all that good stuff. If you have my stuff and post about it on Instagram, tag me, please, because I think it's just the coolest thing in the world. Someone is using my work in their practice. Genuinely, that's incredible to me. I think it's so cool. So yeah, tag me. Everything's linked. All the decks will be listed in the description. I'm like, what is the housekeeping stuff that I usually have to do? But I think that is it. So I'm going to round out this video, which has, already been extremely long. So why not make it longer? I'm going to do a little reading for us. And I think inspired by this plant that is on my desk because it was making a really annoying wobbling noise where I usually have it. We're gonna do a little nature spread. Nature is just 2 cards, somewhere to stay grounded and rooted and somewhere to foster growth and expansion. I'm gonna do a little 2-card reading for us for this month of June. Who should we use? I feel like the Jupiter works with the green, but also the Jupiter could be quite intense and that's not the energy for this moment. Let's use Fifth Spirit. Okay, somewhere to stay grounded and rooted, the Wheel of Fortune, interesting, and somewhere to foster growth and expansion with the Page of Cups. So interesting to have the wheel and that constant cycle of change as something to stay like grounded in, but I suppose change is constant. We've got all 4 elements. We don't have a lot of control. We don't have external control as individuals. That's simply not how it works. And so I feel like that's like a reminder to stay grounded in the present, like grounded in the center of that wheel as it's turning. So you've got a center, you've got something to kind of stay centered on. How many times can I say center? But yeah, so grounded and rooted in the fact that life has changed, everything has changed, nothing lasts forever. The bad times end, the good times end, it all keeps rolling. And I think the sooner that anyone can kind of make peace with that or remind themselves with that, I say the sooner as though it happens once. But I think that it's a good reminder that things keep moving, that you don't have external control, that like things are going to happen no matter how hard you plan. You'll be on the up, you'll be on the down, like it all keeps rolling. I think that is an important thing to remember. And especially, like, I love the Page of Cups with somewhere to foster growth and expansion because the pages are all about growth and expansion. It's that curiosity. Also on a purely visual level, I love that we've got the Wheel of Fortune and then this Page of Cups is in a wheelchair. So we've got a little wheel there as well. There's a lot of motion and this idea of staying like grounded in the motion, like find your center, but let the curiosity keep like turning the wheel. I really like that. So foster growth and expansion in your curiosity, in forging new relationships or new creative acts. So I think that's our little 2-card collective reading. Sounds like a bit of a paradox, ground yourself in the motion, ground yourself in the change, and let your curiosity motor that change a little bit. That really is everything that I have to share with you in this video. Thank you so much for watching and spending some time with me. If you've made it this far, I really hope you've enjoyed. Give me a like if you liked it, subscribe if you haven't already. Let me know what your favorite queer decks are. Head to the link in the description, check out my zine, all that good stuff. And happy Pride. I will see you in the next one. Bye bye.